Soviet submarine S-13 is waiting in the deep Baltic waters for the next target of opportunity. To complicate matters, the captain of S-13 has a pending court-martial over his head for his actions in the previous port of call, so he's looking for any tonnage he can sink to take to the court-martial to help lessen his penalty. That's when, according to the logbook of the S-13 is recorded, an enormous unidentified vessel is sighted. Our story begins January 30th, 1945. In German-occupied Poland, Hitler authorizes Operation Hannibal, which is the operation to evacuate military and civilian personnel from the ports of northern Poland to the German city of Kiel. The Wilhelm Gustloff is one of the transport ships in this flotilla, in this plan. On the morning of January 30th, the people allowed on board for evacuation are military personnel first, and then mothers with children second. So having a child on the pier is like having a boarding pass, and the ship quickly fills up beyond its 1,800 person capacity. Some of the women that get on board with the children return to the railing and look down over the pier that is now crowded with a throng of people, and they find their family members. They know that if they can get their children to them again, they can use their children as a boarding pass to come on board the ship. And in a few cases they try this. They hold their own children out over the rails as far as their arms will reach and drop them the short distance into the waiting arms of family members below on the pier. Some children in this method are used up to 4 to 5 times to get family members on board the ship. In some cases, the children are fumbled into the icy Baltic seas and either crushed between the ship and the pier or just drowned in the water below. But that's only the beginning of the tragedy that will come to the ship tonight. A little after noon, the Wilhelm Gustloff gets underway with over 9,000 people on board, approximately 5,000 of which are children. On board the bridge, there's an argument going on because there are 4 captains on board. The Wilhelm Gustloff, during its 4 years welded to the pier, was used as a hospital ship, it was used as a submarine training squadron barracks, and it has the captain of the submarine training squadron on board. It has 2 other merchant ship captains on board, and then the captain of the Wilhelm Gustloff himself, who has not been to sea in years. And they're having an argument as to how to get underway safely with all these people on board. Because the ship has been poorly maintained for so long, they can only make 12 knots, and that makes them a prime target for Allied submarines. Well, the submarine training squadron skipper recommends that they hug the coastline in as shallow water as possible. The problem with that is that the Wilhelm Gustloff's captain believes that that route, not only wrought with danger of running aground, is also mined with Soviet and Allied mines. He doesn't want to run into a mine. He knows where the mines are that Germany has laid, and he wants to run the route through those mines into deeper water and then make way to Kiel, Germany, and that's what they do. They steam for 6 hours through the known minefield and into the deep water of the Baltic Sea. At about 6:15, 6:20 that evening, they receive a radio message of 2 minesweepers returning to port and that they're coming the opposite direction that the Wilhelm Gustloff is going. That's what the captains all realize. So there's another argument underway as to do they turn on their navigation lights or not, or do they risk collision with the minesweepers? Reluctantly, the captain of the Wilhelm Gustloff turns on his red and green navigation lights to avoid collision. Adding to the mystery of this, they never see a minesweeping craft the rest of the evening. Where that transmission came from is unknown, but who's waiting for them out there in the deep water is Soviet submarine S-13. The captain of the S-13 orders his submarine to follow the navigation lights on the horizon for 3 hours, and at 1900 local time, they submerge for attack. At just over 9:15 at night, the S-13 shoots 4 torpedoes towards the Wilhelm Gustloff. 3 of the torpedoes leave the tube. The 4th torpedo is lodged in what is called a hang fire, where the torpedo primary is armed but did not leave the submarine and could explode at any moment. As the 3 torpedoes that did launch swim their way towards the Wilhelm Gustloff, the crew of the S-13 in the torpedo room carefully, gently backhaul and disarm the torpedo that did not launch, preventing it from exploding on board the S-13. The first torpedo of the 3 successfully launched into the German transport strikes the bow on the port side. The second one strikes right after the first shot, and the third successful shot into the German transport hits right below the smokestack, entering the engine room and immediately cutting off all power and electricity to the ship. The ship at 9 o'clock at night immediately goes dark and begins sinking to its port side. There is absolute chaos and pandemonium below decks as women and children scream in pitch blackness, trying to find their way through the narrow hatches that lead topside. To the few that make it topside, they find themselves in an icy wasteland as ice has covered everything exposed to the elements. The lifeboats cannot be lowered because of all the ice around the rigging, and the crew has to hammer away at the ice to break it free so that they can lower the lifeboats on the port side. Because the ship is sinking so quickly to the port side, the starboard side is quickly being raised out of the water, eliminating all those starboard lifeboats as being usable because of the angle of the ship. The few lifeboats that do get launched are overcrowded. The calls for women and children first are largely ignored, and anybody that can get in a lifeboat does, and those that even can't hang on to the side as it's being lowered. Of the over 9,000 people on board the Wilhelm Gustloff, only 1,200 were saved, making the Wilhelm Gustloff the worst maritime tragedy in history.